Does your financial advisor take the time to really listen to you? Is your financial strategy personalized to you and your family? Will your financial advisor be there as your life and financial situation change? Hi, I'm Jerry Mangona, your Edward Jones financial advisor. I live here in Corktown, just a few blocks from the Daily Detroit studios, and when we work together, we'll focus on what's important to you. We'll use an established process to create a personalized financial strategy backed by the advice, tools, and resources to help you reach your goals. And we'll partner together to help your strategy stay on track. Contact me toll-free today at 866-975-8655. Again, that's 866-975-8655. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is Monday, November 27th, 2023. I am Jer Stays, and across the table from me, as he is to start every week, is
Fletcher Sharpe. Before we start, I was watching some high school football over the weekend because it is high school football championship time, and all the games are played at Ford Field. A play caught my eye. Belleville was playing against Southfield A&T. Trying to go for a three-peat in D1 championship, which they did not do, losing 36-32. But one of the greatest catches I've ever seen happened early on. Adrian Walker Jr. intercepted this pass, and I think what made it so amazing wasn't the fact that he went up to go catch it and bobbled it and caught it behind his back. It's the fact that he had the wherewithal as he caught it, because when he initially was trying to figure out where the ball was, his knee was on the ground. He had the wherewithal to pick his knee up off the ground as he controlled the ball, which then made him not down to then turn around and take off running. And honestly, could have probably scored, but got tripped up. But the fact that he even hauled the ball in right then was insane. And it's probably the only time in the history of Twitter as an app that Belleville, Michigan was trending for something. So, I mean, shouts out to him for that catch. I mean, unfortunately, they lost, but you've got 2 state titles to hang your hat on, and he's got a chance to get another one. So congrats to him on the achievement.
2 things. The state of Michigan has some amazing football talent, man. Like it's deep, and it's been deep the last few years.
Yeah, their running back for Belleville is actually on his way to Michigan. The quarterback for A&T is on his way to Kansas. So like they're putting kids not just at high programs, but also programs that are far away. Kansas isn't necessarily great, but the fact that they're looking in Michigan for talent for a kid who they want to be a starter next year, like lets you know, like there are kids everywhere who can play.
And number 2, it's not formerly Twitter for you?
No.
I was wondering, because you're still over there, and I've been posting more lately over on Threads.
I haven't updated the Twitter app, so it's still the bird on my phone. So it's Twitter. I'm never going to update it. It's never going to be X. I don't care who owns it. I don't care. It's never going to be X. It's going to be Twitter until I decide to stop using it. I've been posting a bit more in Threads, but also like I don't want to use like the separation of church and state, but like Facebook is for when you want to post pictures of your kids. Instagram is for when you want to post pictures of like food and like places you've been, and Twitter is for like when you want to ramble. So the fact that Instagram's like here's an app that's kind of like Twitter, like I don't want people on Instagram to see the thoughts I have that are for like it's supposed to be separate. So like it's transitioning from that to like, you know, now I'm using this as like a actual tool to get news out as opposed to like look at this weird meme. So yeah, it's a weird, it's an adjustment for me, but I'll get there soon.
Well, I am trying it hard for the month of December. Actually, I started with Thanksgiving, and I'm leaning hard over there just to see what happens. And you know what? I'd love your feedback. dailydetroit@gmail.com. Look, there's a lot of sports to talk about. Michigan, of course, if you follow sports at all, you know that Michigan beat Ohio State 32-24. I was in Ann Arbor for this one. The energy was insane in that town. And I'm just going to start with this. Sherrod Brown deserves a bigger check, 100%, or I don't see how he doesn't get phone calls to coach programs.
If I'm him, I don't go anywhere yet, only because if Harbaugh is on his way out, you're there and you're like, look, I did this thing that some coaches in the program have done, some coaches have not done. Like, why don't you give me a shot? But it's good to see how the program, whether you like him, whether you don't, truly acts like a family for each other. Like the first thing out of the coach's mouth when they interviewed him was talking about Coach Harbaugh and how this one was for him. One of their main players, Zach Zinter, went down with a major injury. It was so bad they didn't even show it on replay. And the following play, Blake Corum goes in and scores a touchdown and promptly flashes a 6'5" for the camera for his fallen teammate. So you see, like, they care about each other. Of course they want to win. The point of sports is to win. No one plays sports to lose. I mean, I know people say they want to go to have fun, but, like, it's a lot more fun to win than it is to lose. And I don't really know anyone who thinks differently. But the fact is, it shows that they actually care about each other. And that's, whether you like it or not, like, that's something you need to respect, because there's a lot of programs that will do stuff like that. And it's not just for show. Like, they might do it like, oh, we're friends, we're friendly. And then you go and look later and, you know, there's some issues. But here, every single time something's happened to one of their people, whether it's been the coach, whether it's been a player, anything of the sort, they've always had each other's back. And that's a trait in a team that, you know, is going to let you know how well they're going to do at the beginning of the season.
I think of annoyance to Ohio State and other non-fans of Michigan, it's that every one of these challenges seems to have just made them stronger. It's kind of like when you're fighting a final boss and you're like, oh, I got you. I got this thing. And then no, not at all. In fact, whatever you did just added like 10 hit points to him.
It's, I guess the way I'll call it is athletic kitsune. I don't know if you know what kitsune is.
Tell me.
It's the Japanese pottery where, like, they'll break pottery apart and then they put the cracks, put it back together, but in the cracks they fill it with gold. So, like, it's stronger and also worth more as a result. And it made some really cool patterns. So every time people tried to break Michigan to make them like, oh, look, they did this, it was all because of the signs. They go and show, like, it's not because of the signs. Like, there's athletes here, and, like, they'll walk up and down your program. And Ohio State spent the entire year talking about how tougher they were and that they're a tougher team and they're ready for this stuff. And there's a clip of a cornerback, 190 pounds, throwing down a 300-pound lineman from Ohio State. Like, that screams toughness, because at that point, it's not about, like, size. It's about whether you want it or not. And if someone is almost 200 pounds less than you throwing you to the ground, you clearly didn't want it. Like, that's it. You just didn't want it at that point. And Michigan came out, and Blake Corum did not have a great game. I mean, he had an all right game for his standards. 22 carries, 80 plus yards, 2 touchdowns. Typically, he's a bit higher than that. But you could tell, like, he wanted it. The receivers for Michigan, they wanted it. J.J. McCarthy, he wanted it. Maybe he didn't have the best game, but when he went out there, he showed that he wanted it. And that Ohio State had their moments, had a few people. Marvin Harrison Jr. had a pretty great game, all things considered. But, like, when pressure came time to make diamonds, they burst into coal. And you can't really do anything with that at that point. It's a matter of who wanted it. And I hate to keep saying that phrase, but, like, it looked like Michigan really, really wanted it. And Ohio State was like, well, we're here. And yeah, that doesn't really work out against good teams, only against teams that are afraid of you. And in this rivalry, no one should be afraid of the other team.
I feel like Michigan is almost a foregone conclusion for the college football playoff.
I mean, that's typically when, like, teams lose, is when they're like, yeah, don't worry about this. So I think they should probably remain focused, because as Iowa is a nationally ranked team somehow,
ouch. Not a Hawkeye fan, I see.
For, like, the past 15 years, like, Kirk Ferentz has done some good things, but, like, he's played some of the most disgusting offensive football it is to watch. I don't really even know how they produce talent on the offensive end, because their offense routinely ranks near the bottom of NCAA, and not just like NCAA, like the Big Ten. I mean, like, out of 130 programs, like, they rank at like 120th in offensive efficiency, which is really bad. That's really bad. Like, you have schools like the Citadel and, like, Southern Alabama, like, they're above you, and, like, that lets you know, like, all right, must be doing something right to be where you are, but doing something wrong. Because, like, how can your offense be so poor? It's to the point to where, like, the over-under for games for them are, like, 24. And, like, people are taking the under and still winning money. Like, that's really bad. Like, it means you're playing defense that's playing really great. It means your offense is playing, like, atrocious. So, I mean, as long as Michigan remains focused, like, I think they'll be fine. And if they win the Big Ten championship, then they will definitely finish in the top 4 and end up in the playoffs, which is where they want to be in the first place.
For nostalgia reasons, I kind of want to see Washington. And even though Washington's coming to the Big Ten and everything's changing next year, I think that was one of the things that made the Ohio game more special, is that these games won't be as important going forward they will be important for the rivalry, but not for positioning. Because you know what? In next year, Ohio State probably would be in the playoff anyway.
I mean, they might be in the playoff anyway this year.
You think?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of balls have to bounce their way.
I mean, potentially, but also strength of schedule. I won't say they played the most rigorous schedule, but they had a pretty good resume going into the Michigan game. I'm not going to sit here and say like it was better than Michigan's, it was the best in the country. No, but it was pretty good, better than some teams who are ahead of them. So all they really need is, maybe Michigan to lose, maybe a few teams to like make some games tighter than they need to be. And, they might finish on top 4 spot. Do I think they deserve it all the way? I'm not really sure. But they might deserve it more than some of these other teams that are there.
Do you think that Michigan has a good chance of being champions?
I would never put money on a Big Ten team right now. There has not been a Big Ten team that has showed me that they can hang with an SEC team when it really matters. And I know like that's going to make Michigan fans annoyed.
Are you breaking their pottery again, Fletcher?
I mean, maybe they're going to put platinum in the cracks and do something else there. Who knows? But like I until I can see a team beating an SEC team and actually like beating them and not just getting by with what I can't in all good faith, because the last time I remember Michigan playing against an SEC team, they got mauled. It was a game where I thought Aiden Hutchinson was overrated because they had him 1v1 on the edge against future NFL linemen, and he was just getting washed away, which obviously shows that he's great currently. So the linemen are just really great, and they're doing great things for the Philadelphia Eagles as well. So like everyone came out great from that game. But like I can't, until I see them compete and actually compete, even if they lose by like 3 or 4 points, I can't in good faith say that I can pick a Big Ten team over an SEC team. Not yet, which stinks, because I'd prefer teams from closer to me win versus teams from not closer to me. But if I was betting money, which I don't, but if I was betting money, I'd probably go not Michigan being champion.
I would love to hear people's thoughts on that. 313-789-3211. Lions lost against the Packers. Look, Thanksgiving disappointment. Are we stressed about this, Fletcher Sharpe?
Yeah, only because Jared Goff has played 2 really bad games. And like, I know there are some Lions fans who fooled themselves into thinking he's like a top 5 quarterback. Everyone knew already he wasn't a top 5 quarterback, but that he was serviceable and he did some good things. And he hadn't had his like historically bad part of the season yet this year. And unfortunately for the Lions, it came in back-to-back games with 3 interceptions leading into 2 costly fumbles. You can't win when your quarterback is not helping you. And yeah, they made it close at the end, but like if it wasn't for one of those fumbles, they probably have a much better chance. And of course, the defense catches some flack as a result. And I'll admit, Aaron Glenn has not necessarily been great on the defensive side. He's been pretty good, but no one say great. When his schemes get figured out, they get figured out. But you can't really fault the defense when your offense is not producing, because football, while it is a game of strength, it's also a game of just endurance and outlasting. And if your offense is on the field for 5 minutes and comes off, it means my defense is on the field for 5 minutes as well. And if my offense is on the field for 30 seconds and your defense is on the field for 30 seconds, your offense goes back out there and they're tired. My defense goes back out there and they're tired. But because you probably know where the ball's going to go, you have an advantage there. So now my guys are trying to chase after your guys while you're eating up the clock. And that's the way to beat the Lions, is to keep their offense off the field, waste as much time as possible, and make the defense tired. And then that's when they start making mistakes you can exploit. And hats off to the Packers. They figured that out. First play of the game, Jordan Love goes deep to Watson and kind of gashes the Lions where they needed him not to be gashed, and kind of set the tone for that game going early. But like, Jared Goff has to be better. And he knows that. Everyone knows that. I'm not going to harp on that.
Is he hurt a little bit? Like, it was clear with J.J. McCarthy, just drawing a parallel, it was clear with J.J. that he was not 100%.
No, Goff he's fine. He's fine enough to where you shouldn't have fumbles like that. I always give leeway to the quarterback because as a former quarterback, it's like, well, you don't get one of those. It's like, all right, fair. But two of them were just really bad throws where it's like, what were you looking at when you released it? One of them was right to a linebacker who was right in front of him. I'm not really sure how he did not see the guy standing here with his arms wide out, but he hit him like right in the numbers. It was almost like he thought the guy was going to turn around and run down the field for the Lions, and that's not what the guy did. He just has to play better, and I'm sure he knows it. I'm not going to harp and say like it's crisis time because they're still atop the NFC North.
There's still a lot of games to play. There's every team in the league is going to have a sluggish part of the season. And I think in general, they're still overperforming in my book.
I mean, it only makes it look a little bit worse only because the Philadelphia Eagles have had 4 straight games where they've been trailing at halftime, come out to win all 4 games, which is tied with an NFL record. So when you're trying to keep pace with other teams that have similar records and they do stuff like that, and then you go out and just crap in your hands to start the game, like obviously it's going to magnify that. But I don't want to come down on Lions fans, but given where you were last year and the year before and the year before, like maybe be happy for this moment. I know like Detroit sports fans are very much not happy for the moment's people. They're like, I want the best. I don't care if we have the best record in team history. We could have one more win. But like maybe be happy that you're in a position to where you're not drafting a lottery pick next year unless something goes catastrophically wrong. Like be happy that your problems to fix are like, I won't say minute, but they're a lot smaller than say the Chicago Bears problems. They're a lot smaller than say the Vikings or even the Packers problems. Like you have the least amount of problems so far in your division. And that's something that we could not say for the Lions for quite some time.
Talking about the Bears, I wanted to get your quick reaction on this, Fletcher. Amon-Ra St. Brown was fined 5% of his salary, nearly $44,000 for a block in the first quarter, way back in that Chicago game. He basically played that game for free because of this fine for unnecessary contact with the helmet. I've been looking at this clip over and over, and I think it's one thing to give him the penalty. I didn't agree with the penalty. Giving him the fine, I am completely against. If it's not clear, you shouldn't do it.
I keep looking at the video and I keep trying to see, like I saw him lower his head and they need to get that out of the game. They really do. But like, it wasn't like he lowered his head to then make contact with the front of this person's head. The person's head went back because his hands got underneath his helmet and shoved his head up, which would make his neck go back. I don't like it. There are a few players. I know the Broncos have one for sure, who's like a serial unsportsmanlike conduct, unnecessary roughness type of guy. He's picked up like 5 of those for hits this year, and like they've been trying to suspend him for games. Like then I understand that the fine and suspension and all that. But like if it's your first time, I feel like maybe a warning, like maybe not, a huge fine, but like maybe something where you're like, hey, don't do that. But a first time offender for this year at least, and something that's severe. I guess the point is like to make a note, like don't do it at all, but just I've watched the clip over and over. And again, I've played football before all these implications were put in. I played before concussion protocols, but like, and I want the game to be safer. Like I want people to, if you get hit in the head, go sit down. Something else happens, you're bleeding, come off for a second. But like hits like these are like part of the game. And I don't want to sound like one of those old heads who's like, they're ruining the game. But like some of these penalties and some of these fines I've seen for hits, like there was one they gave to a running back who was going to run inside between the tackles, and he literally put the ball in his chest and like ducked down to like shield himself from contact. And they're like, yeah, that's lowering your head when you don't need to. It's 20,000. And I'm like, how? Like, is he supposed to run straight up? Like you're taught never to do that because that's how people light you up. You want him to be on the cover of one of those top 10 greatest hits on YouTube, like he's got to protect himself. So when you do stuff like that and say, protect yourself, but also if you protect yourself too well, we're going to find, like, I know people talk like when they need to make it a flag football league, like they're really trending towards like taking away most contact. And if that's the case, then like maybe that is the future of the league, which I've never thought I would say. But like it's getting, I don't want to say ridiculous, but it's getting to the point where like they're overcorrecting on safety. And in a sport where you literally want people to be like human battering rams, like you can't really then dull the edges of the battering ram and be like, well, look, we're trying to make it safe. Like it's still going to be violent nonetheless. People are hitting each other. Grown Goliaths are hitting each other going as fast as they can. Like there's going to be some contact that's going to have someone on the ground for a second. So to try to say you're going to make it as safe as possible is really kind of redundant, because if you'll make it as safe as possible, stop the sport. And we're obviously not all calling for that.
Now heading to the baseball field, Kenta Maeda, a Japanese-born pitcher, is reportedly signed to the Tigers, $24 million over 2 years, was out most of the last year due to Tommy John surgery. The deal, as of this recording, is pending a physical, and he's a former American League Cy Young runner-up. He's 36, so he's on more of the tail end of his career, but I think he can bring some things to pitching for something that we need. And I think it's an interesting thing to sign somebody who's like, okay, this window... He's had success in the past. He's had a rough few years, but his window is the next couple of years.
I have a few thoughts about this. I know the name. I liked him when he pitched with the Dodgers. He's got some stuff. He's got some movement. Mid-90s fastball. Got some tricky off-speed pitches that are mid-low 80s, which I like pitchers like that. But I feel like the Tigers really only got him because he missed most of last year with Tommy John. I also feel like they got him. There's a prospect coming up who's from Japan, and he's made it very clear he's only going to play on teams that have one or two Japanese players already, because he wants somewhere where teammates he can communicate with in his natural native tongue. So I feel like the Tigers signing Maeda is a way of being like, hey, we have a Japanese player. Don't you want to come here with our Japanese player? It's a decent pickup if he can recapture some of his old ways, and maybe not all of them with the Dodgers and somewhat with the Twins, but like recapture enough of it. I think he adds something to the rotation, especially rotation that's been lacking for some starting pitching.
So far, the division looks pretty weak.
I mean, yeah,
Like,
but
we could take advantage of that again. I don't see any of the other teams making any big moves yet.
I mean, the division looks weak, but it also looks weak because the Tigers are in it as well. So like, yeah, like it's not really, you don't really see anyone who's going to run away with it per se, but that also means I don't really see the Tigers running away with it. I don't want to call it the toilet bowl division, but like I feel like it's going to be a lot of the team from here is going to make the playoffs. It's going to be like 10 games above 500, and it's going to be because they just slaughtered the rest of the division and then lost everybody else.
Have you learned your lesson from the people?
I mean, I'm not saying the Tigers can't make the playoffs. I'm just saying that like whoever's going to make the playoffs is going to, not be looking too hot. But if they make the playoffs, then that's all the fans care about. So it could be the Tigers in theory. I just don't see it being the Tigers.
All right, Fletcher, you and I spent the morning at Ford Field for this NFL draft event. They revealed a few more details. This is a really big deal for the region coming up. We are 150 days away from the draft. This is going to take over a whole big chunk of downtown. Some of the economic numbers that they shared with us is more than $164 million in economic impact at the last draft in Kansas City. More than 312,000 people came to Kansas City. Mayor Mike Duggan was sure to say that ours is going to be a little bit different than other cities because ours will be in the heart of downtown. Interested in your thoughts, Fletcher? I am excited about this. I also have some questions from like an infrastructure point of view that I just haven't been able to get answered yet. But you go first, my friend.
I hated the last few drafts where like they had a lot of people, but they were like not really involved. Like I don't obviously want the people on top of the draft selection committee, the players there, because like that creates an uncomfortable atmosphere for the players and the committee and everyone else. But like you do want the fans involved. Like some of the really cool ones were like they had them at New York, and like you see the Jets fans who just are already delusional as is. Just being
I got
Jets
cut
fans.
off by a Jets fan in the drive-through line this weekend. I'm still mad.
You see the people who like really, really care about their teams and they're really about it. And like, I mean, obviously you don't want them booing their draft pick because like that's just childish. Don't do that. But like you want to see them and you want to actually hear them as a picture being made. You want to hear the fans be excited as their team selects a player. Like, you don't want it to be like, oh, for the 5th pick, the Cleveland Browns select, and then they say the person's name, and they have to pan all the way away to some fans who just are like decently far away. Like, you want to keep it where it's like, okay, like maybe they're not directly on top of them, but like they're like a tennis ball's toss away. Like they are there. So to see that might be something happening here, like that's great. Because it keeps people engaged. And like, of course, football is a sport where you are wearing a helmet. It's not like, unless you are a well-known quarterback who has a bunch of sponsorship deals, or like Patrick Mahomes, people know what his face looks like. But like, generally you don't. Like, there's someone in a Subway commercial I didn't realize. Justin Herbert, the starting quarterback for Los Angeles Chargers.
Or if you date Taylor Swift.
I mean, that's also having the ball thrown in by Patrick Mahomes. You're going to know your face as well, and Travis Kelce. But like, I didn't know what Justin Herbert looked like, and I was like, "Who's this tall white dude with slicked back hair?" I'm like, "Oh, he's a starting quarterback in the NFL." The draft is a good way for you to see what your players actually look like, because it's a chance to see them as not just like giant men in armor. It's like they're giant men, but they're also in suits with their face not obscured. You can actually get to connect and see who these people are before they go and put a helmet on, and then you just see their visor or like their tattooed arms or whatever else they have. That's the thing. So like, it's a chance to really connect with the pick. So like, to have it here where when the Lions do select, as long as they keep their 1st round draft pick, to see the fans light up at their own player there, or to have a player who's from the area get drafted and then have him, have some reception from the hometown fans. Like, that's something that I really enjoy. So to see that they're going to try to do something like that and keep it, maybe not the fans like directly involved, but just be like even in the area, like, I really appreciate that.
Yeah. My infrastructure question, and the people weren't there to answer it, the right people. So I'm going to follow up on this. We don't really have great transit from Detroit to the airport. Are they going to do something special? Are we going to run like a limited service? Are we going to do something more than like trying to do metro cars? Like, I know that like the players and whatever, they're going to have private cars and all that other stuff. But if we're going to have fans coming in, how are we going to handle this airport crush? Or do we feel like we're good about it? And I don't know the answer to that. And that's why I want to talk to some experts.
I feel like maybe not. Like, I mean, obviously they might be a chance, but I don't recall any of that happening when the Super Bowl was here. I don't recall them working out special deals. I mean, obviously that was a different time than now, but like, I don't recall.
That's like 20 years ago now.
I don't recall like any sort of like special transit for people out of town. Like, I remember I used to live right above Harmony Park when the Super Bowl was here. So we had a Super Bowl party, and it was just crazy to even have that. But like, people from out of town were just trying to look how to get from point A to point B. They had hotels and such. They knew like where to go there, but they just needed somewhere to go. Like, I can't imagine that. Then again, there's been a much better push as of late to get more people out of town into Detroit to actually see what Detroit is about. So maybe they work something out there. But if I'm just going off of history's sake, I might say no. But history changes.
I would love people's thoughts. One thing that they mentioned about was including more events across the city. I think across all 7 council districts, they'll have things happening in the city. I know that was a concern of yours, Fletcher.
You see these big events come here, and I'll use the World Cup as an example. It goes to a country, and like, during the time that the World Cup's happening, everyone's so happy, everyone's so involved, everyone's like in love, and then the World Cup leaves, and then you have like stadiums that are not kept up, that fall into disrepair. You have event sections that are like now uncordoned off, that just get left to disrepair and just left, and the people who actually were there and not the people coming in to see it, who have to live in it, are all just left with nothing. So my biggest concern was, what does this do for the city of Detroit? Not just the people who will be attending or the vendors who will have their stores open, but like the people who cannot go to all of that, who cannot afford to go to all that. I know they'll have some free events, but the people who just don't have the time to get there, how will they still be included? And I've heard that there's going to be like watch parties, and maybe not every single neighborhood, but enough locally that'll keep people engaged and allow them to still have something to do and to feel involved, which to me, that's good. I enjoy hearing that. I enjoy hearing that they're going to try to get as many people involved as possible. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, like it's a Detroit event. Well, it's a sport event, but it's more of a city event. And I feel like everyone who can be involved should be involved.
Well, Fletcher Sharpe, I appreciate you as always, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm Jared Stays. A little bit of housekeeping. We will be doing 3 shows this week. We are working on the final stretches of our special project, and the reality is that I need a little bit of time to do some work. And if you are a member, patreon.com/dailydetroit. Thank you to a number of people who have joined recently so that they can find out what we're up to. You will learn what we're up to. Fletcher, how do you like what we're up to so far?
Comfy and homey.
Those are 2 great adjectives. Those are very good ones. With that, thank you so much for listening to Your Daily Detroit. Give us 5 stars wherever you listen to podcasts. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around town.